St. Petersburg race fans, are you ready? It's time for those most famous words in all of sports. Please welcome today's Grand Marshal, four-time Pro Bowler and team captain for your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Gerald McCoy, to give the command.
Drivers, start your engines!
Listen, it's been 195 days since you've heard an IndyCar car rev in anger. They're going to turn them loose in St. Pete in a minute. Here we go indeed. Ready for the start of the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, the Verizon IndyCar Series season opener. Starting lineup will come across the top of your screen. Remember that with Will Power out of the race, everybody moves up a spot from what you might have read in the newspaper or online. And there's the Honda two-seat IndyCar, Mario Andretti behind the wheel. Nice visit with Mario while we were down on the grid. Enter at racewithhonda.com for a chance to start a Verizon IndyCar Series race in the two-seater with Mario. Joining him today, quarterback of the Miami Dolphins, Ryan Tannehill. Got a little football theme going, a Tampa Bay Buck with the command to start engines.
You know, even though you're in different sports, the pinnacle of different sports, this is a thrill. Everybody that gets in this car loves it. They get out of it and go, how do you guys do that?
All right, let's get some updates from Pit Road on some more of the stories to follow in this race. Here's Doc.
No doubt that one of the biggest rivalries in Verizon IndyCar season competition are two of the heavyweights, Team Penske and Chip Ganassi Racing. 2016 marks the 50th anniversary for Roger Penske as a car owner, and he would like nothing better than to log a record 17th win in this year's 100th Indy 500. For Chip Ganassi Racing, they logged their 11th IndyCar Series title a year ago with a Hail Mary performance at Sonoma by Scott Dixon. Today, both driver owners have won here, but Roger Penske's drivers have won 7 of the last 10, so the advantage early on today goes to Penske. Let's go to Jan Beekens.
And the manufacturers, of course, Doc, are battling on the racetrack as well. There have been big changes this year for Honda aerodynamically, because it's not just engines, it's aerodynamics as well. And when you take a look at a Honda on the track today, and there's an example of Ryan Hunter-Reay, you say, wait a minute, that looks a lot like a Chevrolet. Yes, it does. They were able to make major aerodynamic modifications over the offseason. Some of that was allowed by a rule regulation that if you showed a deficit, you could close the gap. Honda has done that. The downside, they look the same. The upside, the Hondas look much more competitive to start the season, Rick.
Well, let's talk about the rookies. This season, IndyCar may have its best crop of rookies in years. Think about this, 4 of them. 2 of them have Formula One experience. That's Alexander Rossi and Max Chilton. Chilton is driving for Ganassi Racing. Rossi, part of the Andretti group. There's Connor Daly. Now, technically, he has 6 races under his belt, 2 of them Indy 500s, but he's technically considered a rookie. And then there's last year's Indy Lights champion, Spencer Pigot. He's got a 3-race deal with Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, and today is his debut. An incredible amount of talent right there. And here's the question. Is one of those the next Scott Dixon or Elio Castroneves? What do you think, Alan?
Tell you what, it should be an interesting story to follow for sure. Onboard cameras for you, 7 of them riding between the walls on the streets of St. Petersburg today. There's Oriol Serbia with our Verizon on board, subbing for Will Power. Tony Kanaan a little deeper in the field than we might expect with the NTT data on board. Starting 20th. Happy birthday, Marco Andretti. Can he make it a happy birthday? Mutual of Omaha on board, starting 15th. And Hinch with the Lucas Oil on board, starting in 9th in his first race back. Graham Rahal, former winner here with a Steak and Shake camera, starting in 7th position. Florida boy Ryan Hunter-Reay with the AutoNation on board, starting in 6th, highest qualified Honda in the field. And last year's winner, Juan Pablo Montoya with a Verizon on board. 14 turns, 1.8 mile track. Broadcast available in Spanish by pressing the SAP button on your television, presented by ESPN Deportes. And to get the distance today, it's 110 laps. And they're coming off the final corner for the first green flag of the season. Simon Pagenaud, to camera right there, is now the pole sitter. And here we go to start the new campaign.
much better than what we've seen the last few years, Scott.
A lot of parts were flying last year because drivers are close to each other. A lot of jostling going along, especially in the back section there. Remember, this is like trying to go along these city streets. And the 14 of Takuma Sato, I'm not sure if he's been hit from the back. Now he's got a flat tire. See, that right rear tire is flat.
And
So
something wrong with Hinch also. Hinch was off the pace. I believe he pulled to the right as they came down that straightaway, and it slowed down almost all the way to the back of the field.
If the qualifying pace is anything to go on, Simon Pagenaud has an advantage over Montoya. He's been about 0.2 of a second quicker than him. So now they all settle down, we'll see.
There's Hinch. And he had just went straight off. Did he have a right rear tire flat?
Yeah, those guys started next, just in front of each other, actually, on the grid. So I would imagine they possibly could have had a collision.
Looking for the safety team to get him spun around so he can continue on off. Joseph Newgarden is on the pit road on the first lap.
The driver that's on the move is Marco Andretti.
Yeah, Marco up to 7th.
So disappointed in his qualifying time. Said they had to go back with the engineer, sit down, and sort of rethink their race setup because he really expected to be a lot better off the trailer than he was.
Whatever they've done, it's working so far.
There's Newgarden leaving pit road. Newgarden was one that fanned out on the front stretch on the initial start and made a couple of moves into turn 1. It might have been part of where the field accordion. Takuma Sato has just left pit road with a new tire. And here's Hinch. Sorry, Jan.
And of course, what he's trying to do is stay on the lead lap, but that's not going to happen. There they go. They flash by on the front straightaway. If he hadn't had that little off-course excursion and turned around, he might have been able to get a tire and continue and stay on the lead lap. But now it's going to be a long day for James Hinchcliffe.
And as we predicted, Simon Pagenaud is slowly getting distance between himself and Juan Pablo Montoya. No, it's not. It's Castroneves.
Yeah, Castroneves second, Montoya third, Dixon fourth, and then Ryan Hunter-Reay in fifth. Marco Andretti started 14th. He's up to 7th.
First few laps of every race, especially the first race, are so difficult. I'm just wondering if a lot of those guys in the back on the start, with these big wings that are on the front of the cars today, a lot of these guys may have touched each other and sliced the tire of the car in front because we saw a couple of flat tires. That's usually possibly the case.
When that happened last year when these kits were new, all these pieces, you remember, were flying off all over the car. Now it seems that they're staying on the car even if they do bump into a tire in front of them.
Such a bumpy section here coming down this runway into turn 1. The drivers are telling me they believe it's bumpier than it was last year. Maybe a few other places around here, especially coming up 3 into 4, where we see the 22 of Simon Pagenaud coming down now. A lot of drivers have gone off into that escape road that is there for in case you make a mistake. But the interesting thing I'm hearing is that a lot of this track will probably be repaved before next year. So a lot of drivers are looking forward to that.
Now, I know it's been a while since the Verizon IndyCar Series is raced, so just by way of review, 2 tire compounds in the series. The standard primary tire, they call it, the black sidewall, the alternate tire, as they call it, with the red sidewall. The red sidewall, the alternate tire, a little bit softer, will have a little more speed at the start, but will fall off more quickly. You have to run each compound for at least 2 laps in the race.
And it isn't, you aren't always sure that the setup you have will work on the reds, Scott, and also work on the black tires.
Well, there's certainly a compromise, and some drivers enjoy their car with the primaries on, the black sidewall. Some feel that the car works better with the red sidewall. It all depends on how you drive the car. If you're smooth and you don't abuse the tire, then maybe you can use that softer compound, the red sidewall tire, a little longer before it goes away on you. Riding along with Tony Kanaan right now, not a very good qualifying for him whatsoever. He's moved up to 16th. He qualified back in 20th. And then Tony's really had just a really bad weekend so far. Jan, you have some more on Tony?
I do. He has been very uncomfortable on the brakes, Scott, and you can know that's a very sensitive thing for race car drivers, and especially for Tony Kanaan. He just didn't have the feel of the brakes that he wanted. You can see how cars behind close in on the braking area for Tony Kanaan. He just doesn't have that feel. These are handmade carbon rotors and pads, and they have a different character. He just hasn't been able to find a set that he likes, and then when he finally did find a set, they ran out of time to set up the car. He's trying today to go out on Scott Dixon's setup.
He's under a lot of pressure.
So Tony Kanaan running back in 16th place. So it's settled in a little bit here. Time to go back and look at the start of the race and where some of this contact that caused flat tires might have occurred. That's Newgarden, first one popping out screen left.
You always want to try and pass cars in the start, take advantage of all the cars being close together, but look at all the bumping that's going on. Looks like Marco Andretti possibly into the back of Jack Hawksworth.
And it looked like Hinchcliffe got his in the accordion down into turn number 1. So a little shuffle and a little scuffle on the start has gotten a couple of fan favorites pretty deep in the field.
Brake rolling as well. Clear out.
Riding with Tony Kanaan, who just left the pit lane here at the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, struggling in the early going. You heard Jan's report on this 10 car, and now he's just been on and off the pit lane, and Jan, he's all the way back to 20th place.
Yes, and it's one of the things they need to do, and that is to play some gambles. Tony's still not happy, decided to come in and make a tire compound change. So again, when things are not going your way, sometimes you come in early, see if you can change those fortunes. When he was pulling into his pit box, he was shaking his head in frustration that, man, we just are not able to get this car where we need it.
Jan, I think we heard him say they changed the front wing, and on the radio said that might help the brake cooling. Is he having problems with his brakes?
They're working on the cooling. As you said, they took some front wing out, and they're hoping that that's going to help with the cooling. Again, the whole challenge for this team this weekend is to get the brakes to work. And as you know, there's a very narrow temperature window that these carbon brakes like. And if it's not there, it starts to fade, and you're in a world of hurt.
Thank you for that information.
Long day between the walls on a street course if you can't stop the car. So this is the race for second place. You see Simon Pagenaud has checked out. You said that before. You expected it to happen, Eddie.
He's in a different state right now.
So Helio Castroneves in 3, and last year's winner Juan Pablo Montoya in 2. Kind of head the pack here, fighting for the runner-up spot.
You know, thinking about Simon Pagenaud, came to the Penske team last year. You're always expected to win when you drive for Team Penske, and Simon did not have a win last season. We had some time with Roger Penske earlier this weekend in talking about all his different drivers, but he did mention for Simon Pagenaud that he thinks that he has the opportunity to go ahead and win. He knows he has the good equipment, and he said, you know, we expect our drivers to win.
I thought that was a very political way of saying it's very important for his career here at Penske that he starts winning some races, but he's doing a great job today. And everybody kind of forgot after that magical drive that Montoya had in Indy that Pagenaud was actually the fastest of all the Penske cars until he lost his front wing.
Well, he just ended up clipping a car and broke his front wing.
He's going wide. Castroneves slipping wide.
Yeah, a little too deep into the turn.
This is where they can use that overtake, and he does. We don't know if he used it, but it sure did have a big acceleration. I know.
Too early to really push and defend and try to block out your teammate, but Juan Pablo has really just done a tremendous job there, timed it right.
And now Dixon has Castroneves in his crosshairs.
You know what a lot of the drivers are talking about is a consistency with the car. As you start to run more laps, the tires start to wear, and a lot of drivers are talking about the rear tires going first. So what happens then is you're not able to get out of the turn as quickly as you want. That's called power down. You put your foot on the gas, tires are starting to spin. We'll have to watch Castroneves and start to see if that's part of his problem.
It's really good to see those two Hondas, Alan, right behind
Ryan Hunter-Reay and Graham Rahal. And Marco Andretti right there also.
Three of them.
Marco tweeted out this morning that his car felt good in the morning warm-up. He hoped that the track position appeared. There's Castroneves wide again in that last corner.
Could that be a brake issue?
Could be a brake issue. Remember, you're coming down there at 145, 148 miles an hour. So if he's starting to get what we call a long pedal, your pedal's getting soft, you push it, and it's not as hard as it should be. It's amazing. So he's got some issue going on, and for more on that, let's get down to Doc.
Yeah, 2 laps ago, Elio Castroneves radioed into Roger Penske, the captain, and said, hey, the front tires are gone, Roger. So I'm trying to be easy with the front tires. Remember, these are the alternate compound. The red tires are gone. He said, I have no grip turning the car. And so you saw what happened the next lap by. Montoya, his teammate, came by, and now he's a sitting duck. Just can't get the car to turn because the front tires are used up.
All right, so something to keep an eye on for Elio Castroneves and see if the captain goes to an alternate strategy for him. The Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg continues after this from your ABC station. Riding on board with Juan Pablo Montoya. Download IndyCar Mobile to access exclusive live in-car cameras, hear driver and pit crew audio and more, only on Verizon. Little new look to the Penske Verizon cars this year. Of course, Team Penske's 50th anniversary season. And everybody's looking for this guy. He's way out front. It's Simon Pagenaud as a bid for another spot on Castroneves. Marco Andretti took a shot at him in turn 1. Andretti still trying to hold off Graham Rahal.
What a battle between 2 famous last names between Andretti and Rahal. You can see that Marco is going to pounce on Elio Castroneves very shortly. You can see he's really just being able to run up the back of the car. Now through this tight section here, Elio doesn't have to worry because he knows that there's no room for the car behind to be able to make a pass. But this run here, he needed to get a great run out of that turn, and he did. So he's thinking, go slow through the other turns and use my tires up through that last right-hander to get that run going down the straight.
If I was in his shoes, having an Andretti behind me that hasn't won for quite a long time, I'd be worried every corner, every place, because he is desperate to get by him, and he knows that he has a quick race car today.
So a couple things here, details. First of all, Marco last won in June of 2011 at Iowa. So yes, it's been a while. All of his talk coming into this season has been, it's time to win. We need to win, we need to win. Other thing, technical updates on these cars that may come into play in this situation. IndyCar has increased for this season the horsepower that you gain with that push-to-pass feature. The feature on the steering wheel that lets the electronic engine control unit increase the horsepower of the engine briefly. Allow you to pass, basically. They've increased it by 20 horsepower, so it's now a 60 horsepower difference between standard running mode and push-to-pass mode.
But they made one change to that. Before, the driver could defend himself because the pits would tell them when somebody else was using it. So you would push the pass, and the car in front of you would push it. So sometimes it wouldn't equate to anything. So now I think there's a lot more. It's almost like using a credit card right now. You have to be careful you don't spend it all at once. And who knows? Maybe Marco in this case is spending a whole bunch of this.
Our Honda telemetry for Marco Andretti's car.
You talk about the debit card use, Eddie, and it's really true. Remember, we're just early into this race, so you don't want to start using these push-to-pass opportunities that might get you past the car in front. A lot of these guys keep these towards the end of the race, and also you want to use them on restarts when you have the opportunity to maybe get a couple of cars by using that. So you're right. It's like a debit card. If you use it early, you'll have nothing left when you need it close to the end of the race.
I just want to follow up and tidy up the story you were telling about the push-to-pass. Last year, IndyCar took away the ability of the teams to see on the telemetry that comes to their pit boxes how many push-to-pass modes the other teams have left. Yeah. So now you don't know whether the guy you're racing has any left or not. He doesn't know whether you do or not. And to tie that together with what you were saying, the likelihood of using it to defend is now much more of a guess.
Before, it used to be a chess game. You push it, I'll push it.
Yeah.
Watching Elio, he seems to be able to keep these guys at bay. That 180 turn, turns 13, 14, certainly is a hard turn for him. He has the opportunity to make some adjustments inside the cockpit. If he has roll bars hooked up front and rear, then he'd go ahead and maybe make some adjustments, change the handling of the car.
Jack Hawksworth is in, Rick.
Yeah, the A.J. Foyt car that hasn't had an incident this year. Remember, Hawksworth last year had all kinds of problems, went through 3 noses in the race. Has not been happy with the way the car came into this race, but they made some adjustments. They felt he was going to be very competitive once things got going.
Also on and off pit road, Alexander Rossi. Earlier, Connor Daly was on and off the pit lane under the green flag. Last year's race, the first green flag pit stops came beginning at around lap 13 and extended through when the leaders pitted at lap 22-23. So we're already seeing that we're closing in on that window. we'll see if anybody else continues to dive onto pit road to hope and catch a caution and steal a little track position.
And exactly, you might as well if you're further back in the field and you're not making progress on the vehicles in front. Now here goes Elio driving in there deep, saw the right front lock up, and he loses a spot to Marco Andretti. Now, the 15 of Graham Rahal, will he get a draft here, be able to run on the inside under braking, 165 miles an hour.
Inside, looking.
This is a really fast part of the track here. It's very difficult to get right up the car in front of your gearbox.
So good job by Elio defending, making that car very wide. It's very difficult. There he is, locking the wheel again. When you lose the front grip on the tires, you're trying to brake deep and you're trying to turn the car at the same time. Those tires do something good only once. They either brake or turn, so he's really trying to make that tire do two things at once.
New season, new looks. That's Sebastian Bourdais in the 11 car right behind Graham Rahal, and also Charlie Kimball's car with a very different look in this knot of 4 cars.
Look at this traffic jam. They have to be very careful that somebody doesn't get out of sync here. With Castroneves every now and again losing his line, the car now, Rahal behind him, will have to make a decision. And here it happens again.
Yeah. And Rahal knows it, so he pushes as hard as he can on the inside, and Elio.
Oh, he goes into the pits right in front of him.
Oh, man, that's not the smartest move, but he got away with that. He needs to go buy a lottery ticket tonight on that one.
50-mile-an-hour pit road speed limit. Castroneves heading toward Doc.
Losing positions and losing grip, and Roger Penske has asked Elio one turn of front wing to try to give him the extra grip they wanted in front of the car. They're going from the alternate red tires to the black tires, the primary tire, which will last longer. 4 tires, Elio down and away.
So Elio was having the same problem that we heard from some other drivers were complaining about, including James Hinchcliffe, talking about the fronts going away. And here's the 21 in the pit lane. Jan?
And it's the second stop for Joseph Newgarden. To answer your question from earlier, he did make contact on that first lap. They changed the nose. He now is off of sequence, hoping they can stay ahead of the game and get this car dialed in for Joseph Newgarden. Again, a big day of catch-up for Joseph, who was happy with this car, but the first lap really set him back.
And there is the race leader just behind him, Simon Pagenaud.
Pagenaud is doing very consistent lap times. He's found some way, Scott, to not upset his tires, whereas everybody else is suffering from that.
But when your car is working so well, going over the bumps on a bumpy street circuit like this, and don't forget these are street circuits that have a crown in the road, so when you go through a lot of those turns, you go up the crown to the center of the road and fall back off. It all comes down to the mechanical grip of the car, and that's all through the springs and the shocks and all those sorts of things that drivers can make adjustments with in relation with their engineer and discussion of what they want to do. Penske has done it the best. Everybody in the paddock says that. They've got a great mechanical package on their race cars.
So you caught a brief look there at Oriol Servia, who's subbing for Will Power again today. If you just joined us, Power feeling under the weather, not able to start the race. Servia took the pole-winning car, started at the back of the field. He runs 18th now. Here's Montoya in from second place.
Look for your board.
He was almost 6 seconds behind his teammate Simon Pagenaud. And Montoya for his first official pit stop of the season. Doc?
5 away.
And last year's winner comes in, and they had told him actually to save some fuel. That's maybe why the distance had grown between he and Pagenaud. Going to put black wall tires on. He is down and away 7.3 seconds. John.
And for Ryan Hunter-Reay, he's taking his service as well, having a great qualifying effort, making it in the Firestone top 6. That's a 7.6 second stop for Ryan Hunter-Reay. That is what you need today, Doc.
Graham Rahal said his rear tires were gone, but overall very happy. Been the happiest he's been all weekend with the chassis on the Honda. Watch for Rahal to make some noise. His first stop of the day, uneventful.
So beginning to see the front of the field filter in. Will the race leader come in under green, or will he stay out as long as possible and see if a caution should materialize? As the opening round of pit stops continues, you'll be able to continue to see them in our side-by-side coverage with our ESPN on ABC IndyCar. Scott Dixon is in. Watch that while we watch this. All right, we'll hang on here for a second. Here's Dixon's pit stop. Okay, so while we were going to commercial, this happened and got our attention, and we stopped for a moment.
Oh, a little blocking going on and parts flying.
That is Ryan Hunter-Reay and Luca Filippi.
I don't think Ryan wanted him to pass just there.
That's a little unlike Ryan, but I'm sure that might have the review.
Ryan just off the pit lane on the cold tires, of course. That was his outlap. Here's the race leader, Simon Pagenaud, has led all of them so far. Jan?
Yes, and it's been an amazing day for Simon Pagenaud. And the Penske team, you mentioned earlier, they have predicted this. They have said that Simon, because of his year last year, has learned the Penske way. And wow, a nice 7.1 stop for his team. They look on, and they predicted the fact that now that he is in the groove, his engineer, Ben Bretzman, is allowed to tweak the car outside the window of the other drivers, and Simon is very comfortable right now.
So as the pit stops continue to cycle, Marco Andretti is the race leader. You'll watch the continuing action as we take a break from the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. For real this time, I promise. IndyCar racing now. Later on ABC, the NBA Sunday Showcase presented by BBVA Compass. LeBron and the Cavs against CP3 and the Clippers. It all starts with NBA Countdown. Following the race, game also streaming live on Watch ESPN and the ESPN app. Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, the season opener for the Verizon IndyCar Series, has been led every lap of the way by that man, Simon Pagenaud. Moved up to pole position after the originally scheduled pole starter, Will Power, was not able to compete today, and a substitute driver was placed in his car. Car went to the back. Pagenaud's led every lap so far. No full course cautions in this race. One very heavy caution flag for the announcer's voice. I mentioned at the start of the race that there were possible rain showers in the area. The forecast has a chance of light rain. You see some of the cloud cover starting to build off to the west behind some of the condo buildings. The rain is still better than 50 miles away from here, so it may not even come to play during the race. But if it does, a reminder, if you're new to IndyCar, they do have rain tires, and as long as there's no water that's so heavy on the street course that it ponds and the risk of hydroplaning is too great even for the rain tires, as the leader just hit something there on the track, then we'll be good to go. By the way, the rain tire Firestone has here, they were telling us yesterday, has never been used in competition since they brought out the current generation of rain tire last summer. So it could be interesting if it happens.
This is a tricky little course with lots of walls and not much room to make any mistakes. But when it rains, it gets much worse, much more difficult to keep it on that narrow bit in the middle.
Joseph Newgarden is back on pit road. What, I count for the fourth time, Jan?
Yes, and they had a bad engine misfire cutout. You'll see they're just removing that large cable. They can actually plug in a cable from the timing stand and reprogram any of the settings they need from the engine control unit. So Joseph Newgarden was here a long time. He had a car that was cutting out, an engine I should say. They came in, reprogrammed it, checked everything. Amazing in this electronic age. Now it's not for sure that it's fixed, but they can reprogram it and hope at least they can help him to finish this race as best he can.
All right, Jan, so Newgarden now 3 laps down to race leader Simon Pagenaud. Good little fight there shaping up in the pack after the first round of pit stops are complete. We'll recap it for you in a moment. We are about a quarter of the distance through the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Simon Pagenaud, the race leader. And the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, just past the quarter mark of the race. Verizon IndyCar Series season opener. A very unique set of circumstances allow this to play out. He's on runway, 725, I believe, of the Albert Whitted Airport, which then winds down through a series of city streets, back around into a park, and back onto the main runway of the airport. That, believe it or not, they don't have to close down when they have the race here because they have a second runway. And it's really a unique and beautiful set of circumstances here in downtown. The old Al Lang Field, Mets fans perhaps will remember as a home of Mets spring training for a while. Let's see, they're on 2nd Avenue North here, now onto Beach Drive, then they'll hang a right onto Central, then turn right onto Bayshore. Scream down Weldon Way.
Dan Weldon, who used to live here, and his wife Susie still does. The street was named after Dan just a couple of years ago. When the cars are not on the track, you see a lot of people standing below the sign taking souvenir pictures. It's sort of cool.
Great venue for sure. And great to see the extension. Contract signed for Firestone to sponsor the race and the race to continue on this same weekend for the next few years. Excited to hear.
You could almost say this is IndyCar's Monte Carlo in Florida.
You could.
Having been to both, they're different.
That's why I couldn't. I've not been to Monaco.
The only thing this is minus is the tunnel.
Yeah, that's true. But I always consider the tunnel a nuisance.
There's another St. Petersburg resident, 11 there, Sebastian Bourdais, being challenged by Carlos Munoz. A little different look to both cars for this year.
Yeah, see how bumpy that is in the
Give him
over-under,
room.
and he gets it, just couldn't get it done, couldn't get the power down. Sebastian just couldn't get that done. Now he's going to look on the inside. Very tough place to pass because of the bumps.
Now, while we have been following this, which is a great battle, Juan Pablo Montoya has closed the gap on Simon Pagenaud. I really would like to know, what is this magic dust that Penske puts on his cars to go so well around St. Pete? Those two drivers are in a category of their own. Montoya has really gained with this new set of tires that he put on his first pit stop.
Well, giving the crew a chance and the engineers a chance to rub on the car a little bit doesn't hurt anything either, right? Not just the change of tires and the change of compounds, but a chance to make a wing adjustment.
It was small. It was a little one. They just barely touched it. You're right, though. Perfection is done piece by piece.
Tony Kanaan, by the way, is the last car on the lead lap. You're riding with him. Just been a struggle all race long for Kanaan.
And he has had great races here.
He's had great races there. I mean, one of the premier drivers in this series. And for sure, one of the most fit guys that ever sits in a race car. So interesting just to see that when you look in the mirror and you see Simon Pagenaud, you're in disbelief that the leader's about coming up behind you.
Yes, but to add insult to injury, and I admire both of them, Dixon is P3.
Well, there's many times, as you say, that you're always racing your teammate, aren't you? Because that's how you really get a look at from other teams and other drivers of how well you're doing in your cars. Are you ahead of your teammate?
I don't know of many drivers I'd rather not have in my mirrors than Juan Pablo Montoya. And I'm sure Pagenaud is going to get everything he can out of his car to stay ahead of him, because once Montoya gets ahead of you, as Will Power learned last year, it's almost impossible to pass him.
But it's very interesting how these cars are working on the primary tires. That's the black sidewall tire. It doesn't seem like Simon has the advantage that he had when they had the red sidewall tires on those option tires.
While we watch Montoya try to close in on Simon Pagenaud, you see the interval being clipped little bits and pieces at a time. But at this point through the season opener, Simon Pagenaud, the 31-year-old from France, now living in the Charlotte area where Team Penske is based, has led all of them so far. Professor Simon. I always learn when I talk racing with him.
The month of May, 3 straight weeks of racing on the most hallowed grounds, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We're kicking it off with the Grand Prix of Indianapolis. Then we set the field for the 100th running of the 500 with qualifying. Who will be the fastest of the month? Finally, the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indy 500. Who will make history by winning the 100th running of the race and getting their face on the Borg-Warner Trophy? Coverage starts May 14th on ABC.
By my count, that May 29th is 77 days from today. And it will be a spectacular, if it's anything like the last few, since they've gone to this car formula, and particularly the last two, it's going to be a tremendous Indianapolis 500.
Amen to that.
All right, let's go up to speed, catch up on some of those running toward the front of the field. Let's begin with Jan.
And let's start at the very front with Simon Pagenaud. And you ask the question, why is he dropping back into the clutches of Juan Pablo Montoya and not really making progress on Kanaan? I believe he's saving his tires. You called him Professor Pagenaud, and that's because he is very focused on the fact that he wants to conserve the tires in the middle section of the race. Look for him to be that much faster near the end, Doc.
Yeah, and how about Juan Montoya, the two-time Indy 500 winner? Montoya had a poor morning in the warm-up. He had a car with a significant understeer. Spun it on the track, had damage in the front wing. But when the race began today, Montoya has not had a single complaint. The only complaint he has is the fact that they're telling him you've got to make 3.2 on the fuel. Even though he's running Pagenaud down, he's watching the fuel gauge. Behind him is Scott Dixon, the defending series champion. Dixon, probably one of the best overall at saving fuel and saving tires. He's had no complaints on the car. I believe Dixon's laying in the weeds, being very coy at this point of the race. Rick?
We talked at the start of the race about the rookie crop. We'll check this out. Number 18, Connor Daly. That's right, one of the rookies now in 4th place. Now, part of that is because they're in an off strategy. He came on the radio just a moment ago, said the rear tires are going away on the car. He's going to be coming in very shortly. He was frustrated this morning, had all kinds of boost issues, had problem with push to pass. He's got to be feeling pretty good right now. Right behind him, his teammate at Dale Coyne Racing, Luca Felipe. That's right. Both Dale Coyne cars right now in the top 5 because of their running off strategy. When I talked to him this morning, he said he wasn't particularly fast, but he did feel he had a very good car for the race. You see right behind him, Ryan Hunter-Reay. He's managed to hold him off the entire time, doing a great job. He had a wing adjustment a little bit earlier, but right now he's very happy with the car. Alan?
Yeah, Rick, you could see that right front end plate on the wing flapping around from where he and Hunter-Reay had the contact when Hunter-Reay just came off the pit lane earlier. Show it to you again by way of review.
Just trying to make the move, and when you mistime the move, you end up getting to the driver that's in front of you. Good thing there wasn't more of a collision there, and it took the whole front wing off, because then you would have to go in there and lose some time in the pit lane.
That had the potential to be catastrophic.
Yeah, the speed they're running at that spot on the racetrack, yes.
Yeah, 145 miles an hour, but like I mentioned, not enough damage that they'll probably bother trying to change that during the pit stop, because it seems like the car's working well for them still.
So again, Felipe running in 5th, Hunter-Reay running 6th, Marco Andretti is 7th right there behind them. And you've got Castroneves, who's faded back to 8th, Bram Rahal 9th, and Charlie Kimball 10th. We've got a couple of different pit stop schedules going on, so the field shuffled up a little bit. In fact, Connor Daly's crew has just laid the tires out on the pit lane, so the 4th place runner should be making his appearance momentarily.
Connor last pitted on lap 13, and Luca Filippi last time in was on lap 16, so about 10 laps different than the leader, Simon Pagenaud, this time.
So when they pit, that will put Hunter-Reay in 4th place as the fastest Honda.
You've been very curious in all of our conversations about this season with the aero kit revisions and so on that Honda was allowed to do, and then the aero kit revisions that both manufacturers were allowed to do, what the competition might look like. How do you assess it so far?
I think it was definitely a positive change to allow Honda to go away from their science experiment that they had last year. And they're very competitive. Once the teams get a better handle on it, you'll see them being a lot more competitive than they are now.
There's Connor Daly in, Rick.
They bring the car in. They're going to put red tires back on, obviously a full load of fuel. They're trying to take it very calm and slow, make sure they don't make any mistakes. Remember, he's a rookie, even though he does have 6 races under his belt. A perfect pit stop, and he's out.
All right, so Connor Daly back onto the racetrack. One of the young Americans who's worked, along with his family, so hard to get a shot at a full-time IndyCar ride. He's got it for this season. Simon Pagenaud's got it going on today, but he's got Juan Pablo Montoya right on his rear wing. Simon Pagenaud continues to lead with Juan Pablo Montoya right there with him in the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Closing in on halfway, show you what's been going on so far. If you just joined us, James Hinchcliffe's return to competitive racing after that big crash last May at Indianapolis. Got wrinkled up in turn 1, lap 1.
Just watch his car get stepped out in the back. That means somebody contacted him on the rear, and that right rear tire you'll see is flat. He cannot make the turn, so he has to turn the car around and loses a lap.
Ryan Hunter-Reay also took a little damage a little while ago when he came off the pit lane after his first stop.
And he was very lucky, because that could have been a terrible accident. That was a very high speed, and Felipe just did not judge it right.
Takuma Sato had a flat tire also in that turn 1, lap 1 thing. Joseph Newgarden, he made about 4 pit stops, finally a 5th pit stop. Finally, he climbed out of the car. Jan, what was the end result?
Yes, well, we saw that they did the reprogramming, but for Joseph, that was not the issue. What happened with the car?
I'm not sure. You know, we're taking it back to the pits to try and figure it out. You know, obviously we had a little slow start. I ran into Hinch. Didn't mean to get into him. Had a little more understeer than I anticipated in turn 1, so I feel bad for just clipping him on the outside. Broke our wing, put us on the back foot. I was pretty anxious. I think we were going to catch up. I felt confident in our car, and that's what we were doing. We were playing the catch-up game. But then we had some sort of fueling issue where the car was losing power and just not getting fuel. So not sure what it is yet. Hopefully we can get back out and run some more laps.
Okay, let's get quickly upstairs as we have a caution, Alan.
A disastrous moment in turn 1 for Marco Andretti. Ryan Hunter-Reay made the move inside Luca Filippi. When Andretti tried to follow him, Filippi closed the door. Now he's stalled, and the caution is out.
He had kept the car running and he got the car spun around, but then when he did that, then he stalled it. So now he's waiting for the Hamaltro safety crew to come along and have the opportunity to really get him up and going there. So I was going to watch this here. Just watch what we got going on here with Marco Andretti. Can see some action ahead, and so what he's going to think, I'm going to come along and take some advantage of this. You can see the 28, Ryan Hunter-Reay comes in the inside, and Marco tries to follow through, maybe a little bit too optimistic to be able to take advantage of it and follow his teammate through. Ends up getting that front clipped and ends up having the car swing around on him. Now the car is still running now, and he gets the thing spun back around, going in the right direction, but the second time he ends up stalling the engine. Now here you see on the right-hand side, the onboard, the lane closes for him, takes away the real estate, and the collision happens.
You're being very optimistic by saying, no, you're being very kind by saying even a little bit optimistic. There was no hole to go there.
Well,
he was going to have to go into the grass. That car was already moving to the right.
And a fair amount of damage, as you can see on that left front.
Yeah. It is such a pity. He was having such a good race. He has to capitalize when he has these opportunities, because his last few years have not been as good as the team and as he had hoped for himself. So when he has races like this, you've got to bring it all home. That was a very unlucky occasion there in turn 1.
So not a happy birthday for Marco Andretti. First full course caution of the race. It comes as the leaders were closing in on a pit window. There are many crews and many sets of tires laid out on the pit lane. But pit road was not open yet, so that's why everybody came by. Now, it's been all Simon Pagenaud so far. Storyline for Simon, you kind of touched on earlier, but Roger Penske basically saying, this is the year, got to go. And what a way it would be to answer some of those questions to get your first win for Penske in the first race of this season.
A very important piece for his future history inside of Penske, but to his defense last year.
It's close, correct?
That's Simon asking on the radio that pits are closed. The 22 car that you're looking at
Close
there.
line, if it's on, the pits are closed, correct? Correct.
He's asking for confirmation that pits are closed.
All right, while they work around to pit opening later on today, for those of you who follow college basketball, that I've seen quite a bit of this winter, they'll figure out who's going to be in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. The field of 68 revealed tonight. ESPN has it covered. Sports Center at 5 Eastern, then at 7 Eastern, bracketology presented by Staples, breaking down the matchups with lots of in-depth analysis. Selection Sunday on ESPN, streaming live on Watch ESPN and the ESPN app. Michigan, very much a bubble team. Memphis in position to be a bid stealer today. We'll see if somebody can be a track position stealer on this set of pit stops.
Remember, we talked earlier in the show about the pressure to perform. It's been on the drivers a lot right now, but when you close the pits and all the cars come in at once, the pressure now transfers over to the crew members to make sure that they can get their work done before the other teams on pit lane.
And this also where you get into that balance of how long do you wait on fuel.
Track position is so important.
All right, so
here comes the gamemanship.
The field to the pit road opening.
Brilliant move by Pagenaud to try to break away.
Jan?
And you talk about how long do you wait on fuel? Because of the lap they're stopping, I think you have to fill the car completely. Simon Pagenaud will be the first to stop. Oh, and he slides, but he still hits his marks. That's going to be okay. The whole thing for Simon Pagenaud, can he beat Montoya out of the pits? He's going to need it quick. 7.6, Doc.
Montoya, tires are on, fuel going in. Dixon in front of him, tires are on. Montoya blasts away. Here goes Pagenaud. He will beat Montoya and then Dixon.
Frantic, frantic, frantic. but that's how they come off the pit lane. As the cleanup continues, we'll also follow what the extent of the damage is to Marco Andretti's car in a moment. Under caution, just shy of halfway in St. Pete. Both Marco Andretti and James Hinchcliffe taking the wave around by the pace car. Hinch getting back on the lead lap, now both on pit road. Jan?
Yes, and the key is the wave around. So if he had not lost more than one lap for Marco Andretti, they're going to go replace the front wing nose assembly here. If that is the case, he'll be able to rejoin at the tail end of the lead lap. And remember, this is Marco's birthday. He's 29 today. He has a very racy car. He's very frustrated. We saw how aggressive he was in the early part of the race. It's not over, but he's got a big fight on his hands right now.
Well, it was trouble in turn one that put a damper on the birthday celebration as Marco tried to follow Ryan Hunter-Reay through Luca Filippi. Did not work out well for him, and now he's got a lot of ground to make up, but still half a race left yet to go. We'll see what happens. We're back to the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg after this from your ABC station. Season opener for the Verizon IndyCar Series today, the month of May on ABC. Coming up, starting with the Grand Prix of Indianapolis, May 14th, the race on the road course. The following weekend, qualifying for the Indianapolis 500-mile race, and then the 100th Indianapolis 500. Telecast presented by Firestone. We start at 11 a.m. on May 29th, 77 days from today. It will certainly be a special day, and one that we'll all remember for a long time to come, I'm sure. Roger Penske would like to collect another trophy on that day 77 from now, huh, Doc?
He sure would. And you don't win 16 Indy 500s without understanding strategy. Roger, a moment ago, everyone around you had laid out with the black primary tires. You made a last-minute change to reds for Elio. Why?
Well, I think it gives us a little bit better tire here in the middle of the race, and if we can get some speed out of them, and I think the blacks are very good at the end, so to me it's a toss-up, and I want to do something different than the other guys.
He wore the reds out early on, but the wing change, you think that'll help as far as tire wear up front?
Oh, I think so. We had a used set we started with, which went off, and I think we're locking up our front tire, but I think we're in great shape the last run.
Okay, Roger Penske, he's made the call, put his driver on reds, everyone else on blacks. Maybe it'll get him to victory lane again.
All right, Doc. Well, interesting shuffle in the strategy with some of the people that made green flag stops looking to get off schedule, see if circumstances came back to them. Look who the first two are. Connor Daly and Tony Kanaan. Listen to this from Connor Daly's team.
Not overtaking the pace car, right? No, you shouldn't do that. You're the leader of the race.
Yeah, that'd be a bad idea.
When he started close to the rear, they've done a great job on strategy to get Connor up there. So for still classified as a rookie for a 24-year-old driver out of Noblesville, Indiana. And this will be neat for him because a chance to see if he's on pace with Simon Pagenaud, who's only a couple of cars behind him. So he's looking for confirmation to see if he's got the speed.
Sorry, Scott.
I can kind of give him the answer on that one, but all he has to really do
as
is
a driver in the car, what are you
lap.
thinking right now, leading? I want to see if I can go as fast as the leaders to sort of see where you are.
Of course, mentioned Connor and his family. There's his dad, Derek. They've worked so hard for the opportunity to get a full-time IndyCar ride, and now here it is.
And you raced against him?
I hate to
Formula
acknowledge
One?
it, but I raced against him in 1976.
I would have just said I raced against him. I wouldn't have included the year.
You were 12, right?
Was
you were
Lincoln
12.
president then in
It was karting.
1976?
All right, so Connor is the leader of the race. These are not the first laps he's led in IndyCar. Remember, he did a spell last year as part of the group of drivers that filled in for James Hinchcliffe in the 5-car. Led some laps at Detroit last year. So it's not the first time he's led an IndyCar race, but he's going to get the first chance this year. Side note, Dale Coyne and that group, they always seem to be able to work the strategy well.
He's got to be buttoned up here. Don't worry about the speed. Just watch your mirrors and be buttoned up. He has the right to put his car where he wants to put it on the track. He is leading.
Taking a diamond shape run through the last turn, so he gets good power coming off the main straight, and he does that.
No start, no start.
Well, I'm going to say that he actually put his foot on the gas before the go zone as we have it. You know, Eddie, there's a couple of markers up on the track,
And
we've
look
got
who
a
lost
collision.
the piece. Oh, what happened here?
I think that's why there's perhaps no start. That's Marco Andretti. Was there a little scrum at the back of the field?
But that piece that was on the side of the track was not from his car, I think.
Joseph Newgarden was also back on the racetrack, has just come back onto the pit lane. That might sum up the kind of day that it's been.
These are certainly days when it's not going your way and it just seems to get worse, so you want to put it behind you and get on to the next race.
But those hurt more when you have an opportunity to have a great result like he did today. He drove really well up to that point.
So once we can find out what piece that car off the car, we'll understand maybe what happened here. There's his dad, Michael.
So the red and black piece that is laying on the racetrack, we suspect may have come from the 16 car of Spencer Pigot.
I don't see anything missing there.
As he's going around the turn, the piece is already dislodged from itself, and that piece is large enough, guys. I got to be honest with you and tell you I'm not clear on exactly what that is.
And then whatever happened to Marco was completely separate from that, obviously.
Must look like a drive problem.
Yeah, I think Marco's car was still running.
Oh,
but
there it
you're
is.
correct,
There it
had
is.
no
Yep.
drive.
It's the left front wing inlet. No, no drive problem.
Stalled
No.
again in the stack up, apparently. And we reach halfway under caution here at St. Petersburg. So we've just crossed halfway and we're under caution. Connor Daly leads the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. One of our headline stories of the day, the fact that Will Power is not in the field, and Oriol Servia runs the 12 car for Team Penske today. Servia running in 11th position. Remember back on Friday in the first practice session, Will Power had a very hard crash.
Now that was not a part failure. That was, he was trying to adjust the brake bias on the car by putting his left hand down beside the steering wheel, only had one hand on it.
So came back from that, crew rebuilt the car. He led every practice session. He won the pole in qualifying yesterday. But there is more now on Will's condition, and going forward, we get that with Dr. Jerry Punch.
Yes, Alan, Saturday morning we told you he was complaining of nausea, vomiting, and a headache, and they thought it might be a stomach bug or a stomach flu, but it didn't improve overnight. And when it didn't get better with symptomatic treatment, they realized maybe it's more significant than looking back to that crash on Friday. Although the G-force meters inside the car didn't show that crash to be that high of an impact, they think that they wanted them evaluated. Now we are being told the evaluation shows he does have a concussion. Will Power has a concussion, so they were good to hold him out today.
And for the lead on the restart, Connor Daly, Tony Kanaan, and a variety of others scrapping for spots.
Connor kept the lead.
Kanaan inside again.
Wheel to wheel with Tony Kanaan.
What a great drive. Now he's just got to... Look at this! Look at this!
Half the field in a wreck.
Morning hour, rush hour. What a view. This looks like downtown Tokyo.
A lot of finger communication.
Graham Rahal being emphatic with his gestures.
All right, we're not going to give up on this thing. If we can get it back here, we're going to try to get it going.
Wow.
Listen to all the cars on the rev limiters.
And cars coming out from the escape road also. Wow. All of this down at turn 4 at the end of that long straightaway.
And he's got a flat tire too. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So I counted 9.
9. Now 2 of them have left.
Then a 10th one came out from the escape road.
Yes, and they're starting to leave the crime scene as we speak.
Oriol Servia.
I have never seen something like that. We have been saying all along these are very narrow street courses inside of St. Pete. The only car that looks like it has a lot of damage is Rahal's.
All right, let's see if we can reconstruct.
Coming down to the very bumpy turn 4, and we see a great battle at the front. But watch what happens here. Everybody goes for that same piece of real estate as we talk about. And then number 26, Carlos Munoz, into the back of Graham Rahal. The 12 of Oriol Servia, 41, Jack Hawksworth, and everybody else has nowhere to go. From the great battle up front to the collision.
I think it was Castroneves.
Yeah, but that didn't.
That didn't do what we're looking at.
Right. All right, more. Here's James Hinchcliffe's view. And Rahal.
He just got creamed from behind. Just creamed. That wasn't even a bump.
Oriol Servia's view. So Graham Rahal and Carlos Munoz, the point at which the first contact appeared to begin and set that whole thing off.
And then once a third car stopped, there was absolutely no room to go, and everybody just came around the corner blind.
Well, we're going down city streets, Eddie, that are supposed to be going 30, 35 miles an hour, and we're putting cars down there at 145. And on the restarts, drivers are always anxious to try and pass the other cars because they're close together, take advantage of it, get past 2 or 3 cars. Obviously, sometimes it doesn't work.
Well,
emergency mode off.
Part of what's going to happen here is there's a lot of debris at the accident site, but as these damaged cars drive back around to the pit lane, they're going to leave some things too. So there's going to be some cleanup to be done on the race course before we go back racing. Some interesting views of a big mess just past halfway, turn 4. What a mess. Yellow flag at St. Pete. An expensive moment for sure down in turn 4 as up to 10 cars were stacked up out of a 22-car starting field. Trouble that began between Graham Rahal and Carlos Munoz.
You have to say that a lot of that started because they were so closely packed up together with the battle that with having Daly holding off the lead position.
More on that in a moment, but first a look at everyone that caught a piece of that over in turn number 4. It's a long list. An expensive repair bill. Time for a break. This word from your ABC stations. Lengthy caution in the Verizon IndyCar Series Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. A multi-car crash down in turn 4 that probably began about half a lap earlier when they waved the green flag for the restart and the top 2 went fighting off into turn 1.
They carried that battle through turn 1, through 2 as we see here.
2 battles going on because the first 2 cars, obviously with the Kanon going on the inside of Connor Daly, just behind there. Montoya taking the advantage over Simon. And then everybody follows him behind. And
Daly holds the lead as he comes out of turn 3, and then it just carried through into 4.
So in that short little restart that we had, the position has changed between Juan Pablo Montoya and Simon Pagenaud.
And the other thing that changed, is that Connor Daly for this upcoming restart doesn't have the buffer car of Tony Kanaan between himself and the Penske cars that were running 1-2 before the pit stop and the caution.
And Eddie and I were talking during break, it's one thing to have Tony Kanaan in your mirrors, but now you've got Juan Pablo Montoya. So,
but
which one do you want?
Neither. but Daly is leading, and Daly has the right to decide where he wants to put his car.
All right, checked out on pit road with Rick.
Well, first off, let's talk about the fact that in that last restart, or maybe a couple restarts ago, Connor Daly says that Tony Kanaan actually bumped him. He said he got hit really hard when they came back around that one time. Not so hard that there was damage, but he wanted the team to check out just in case. Now, it's interesting what's happened from a strategy perspective. A long time ago, when we thought we were going green, they were talking to Connor about saving fuel, and they were really going to have to hit a set number. They have changed that completely. They are now saying, go for it. They have one more stop to make no matter what, but it's all about going fast. They've also told him that his fast laps are just as fast as those two guys behind him.
All right, so information to continue to keep in mind for Connor Daly. Did a little experiment with Graham Rahal yesterday while he was out in practice. We had him just kind of like talk through a lap of the track. Let's get you a view of what happens in a lap around the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg course.
Welcome to St. Pete. This is Graham Rahal. We're going to take you on a lap. Up to 6 gears. Speed's reaching 170 miles an hour down the front straight. Heavy braking. Down 4 gears to turn 1. Double apex right-hander. Turn 2, 3. Building speed. Very tight through here. Very bumpy. Down into turn 4 through 9. It's the most important section of the track, rhythm section. Important to get power down and get out. Again, accelerating up to 6 gears, down 4 gears for turn 10. Right and left, then down 3 gears for 13, 14. Again onto the front straight. That's a lap of St. Pete.
And now back to live action as we go green flag racing. Connor Daly being challenged by Montoya.
Tough to defend somebody like Juan Pablo Montoya. So much experience, Formula One experience.
Especially Montoya that wants to get away from his teammate. He's in a hurry. He wants to have as many laps as he can with having Daly between him and Simon Pagenaud. Every corner he can put between one more that he can add on to it is going to help him. Right now, Pagenaud is almost 2 seconds behind and losing. And Dixon is not too far behind Pagenaud.
When the cars come past the flag stand, you'll see a red and yellow striped flag being waved. That's a debris flag. There's apparently a piece of debris that is down the front stretch, offline, and so the drivers are being given that warning that it exists, but the race continues.
Dixon under pressure.
I think from the contact that we've had around this racetrack, guys, I think there's little pieces, as you can see on the left-hand side, just outside the apex there. There's that piece of bodywork, but there's so many pieces of probably bodywork wrapped around this racetrack here, because this has been a bit of a carnage race.
I am really impressed with the pace that Daly is keeping.
It's right in the middle of all world-class drivers. As you can see the Hamaltro safety crew.
Yeah, because the field was bunched up just after a caution, they were able to dispatch the safety truck, pick the debris up, and get the truck back to its safe position without having to put the caution out for the race.
Daly's lines are tidy. He's keeping pace, staying up front of Pagenaud.
See Dixon in the red car, the number 9 Target machine, runs a different line through the last 2 turns, 13 and 14. A little tighter to the curb, sort of doesn't diamond it. See if he didn't get out as fast as maybe Ella Castroneves on the inside now. Makes that complete going across those bumps. That's so difficult.
But remember Doc's report from the pits earlier about Roger Penske at the last second making the change of tire compounds. So Castroneves out to get all he can on the softer tires right now.
To raise on the move. This is that part of the race where you're running out of laps if you're going to do something.
And Mikhail Aloshin in the 7, back in the Verizon IndyCar Series after a year away. Remember when we last saw him in this series? He had that devastating wreck out in California that left him injured. He was not able to compete in the series last year, not necessarily because of the injuries, but because his funding program and so on, and politics and a lot of other things that have many layers to it that I'm not even going to try and explain. But he's back. He's aggressive. He's excited. He's ready to race. He's already had one run in this weekend. He and Sebastian Bourdais had a little moment.
Yeah, almost a little push and shove in pit lane. A lot of words were said, but that's good. We need that.
Yeah. And he actually did not answer him in Russian. It was in English.
Carlos Munoz, penalty, avoidable contact.
Yeah, I think when you hit somebody 20 miles an hour faster than they are, that probably is avoidable.
But you know, you don't have only one guy mad at you. You've got like about a half a dozen of them.
If I was him after the race, I'd keep my helmet on for about half an hour.
Honda telemetry from Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Look at him work the steering wheel.
Hunter-Reay's in P6.
Street courses are always a punishing track. It's not like when you go off to Mid-Ohio or the Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin track that we're going to later this year. Purpose-built racetracks out in the countryside. Don't really see any car traffic, obviously, but here you've got city streets with manhole covers and crowns in the road for water drainage. You can see how bumpy it is for these drivers here. Really tough on the drivers to sit in the cockpit here for 110 laps in high temperature today, and the humidity, and Eddie, you know this, whenever it's about ready to rain like it is about here this afternoon, it is like sitting in those cars like sitting in a sauna.
It is. It definitely is. I am so proud of what Daly is doing. It's so good to see an American rookie right up there mixing it up with everybody. He's showing everybody that he knows how to do it, just give him the right car. A great drive, a really good driver, and a lot of pressure on a very punishing circuit, as you said.
But we also have to note that he's in the middle of 2 cars that are owned by Roger Penske, and he's with one of the smallest teams.
Roger who? What is that? That's Daly. He's second.
Yeah.
He's surrounded by the best. I was just...
Yep.
So fortune's turning. Remember Tony Kanaan, we saw all the way at the back of the field earlier in the race. A pit stop strategy, getting him off strategy, and so on, has regained him some track position. Kanaan there in the 10 car running in 8th position. He was racing there with Charlie Kimball, who was behind him in 9th. So now with Montoya leading, we begin to think ahead at who's on what fuel strategy, and when we'll see the final round of pit stops begin. The race winner last year, Juan Pablo Montoya, made his final pit stop at lap 81. We're at 68 now. Remember, of course, we just had that long caution. How much will that alter strategy?
Well, alter strategy, everybody's trying to get to that lap 80 area. The guy that had the benefit of that long yellow, though, was Connor Daly, because he came in last on lap 41. So it's going to be crucial to see if he can get all the way to around lap 80 to be able to get that last one stop in for fuel.
Right now, I don't even think he's worrying about that. He's just driving it as hard and as tidy as he can, and he's keeping pace with the best of them.
You know what I love about him? I spoke to him last week at a event in Indianapolis, a karting event in Indianapolis, and one of his exciting things he said is, I now get a vehicle to drive in the road, because all manufacturers give their drivers vehicles because his car's been breaking down. He's a driver that didn't really have any money. He's here on talent alone, and he said, you know, I don't have to bum rides anymore. He's actually been living in James Hinchcliffe's house on and off when he's in Indianapolis, so it's pretty funny.
He keeps this up, he'll be buying a Cadillac pretty soon.
Dale Coyne, longtime IndyCar owner, just has that knack for finding drivers and working strategy and squeezing the most out of it. It's the little team that can.
It's the team that does so well in Detroit, doesn't it? Every time there's an issue in Detroit, he finds a way to put his drivers up in front.
you know, you were saying before about what Connor's thinking. I'll bet he's just got a huge smile on his face. Hey, I'm racing Montoya for the lead of an IndyCar race.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, he is. Great drive, great race. I really like this race course.
So who is going to make the first move to pit road for a final round of stops? The answer to the question is Scott Dixon. 40 laps to go in this race still, but last year's champion is the first to make a move to pit road. Doc?
They're saying the water temperature. He's saying the water temperature is starting to go up and creep up more and more on the car, so they wanted to wait 2 or 3 more laps, but they're going to come in, change tires. They pulled some debris out of one of the side pods, one of the tunnels a little bit ago in the previous stop, and they're going to take a look at the car here on the side and try to get the debris out of both sides. The radiators are inside those side pods where they can ventilate the side and keep the water temperature down, but he said it's rising too quickly. I've got to go ahead and stop now. Still cleaning the left side. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
And the question was, of course, who would make the first stop on pit road? And this is too early for Scott Dixon. Of course, it's because he had overheating. But to answer your question, you would like to get to lap 80 or more, but you could stop as early as lap 78 and make it to the end of the race. And you heard Rick DeBrule say earlier that Connor Daly, although they used strategy to get themselves there, he is on the same strategy essentially as everyone else. He just has a little narrower window. He'll have to stop between 78 and 84, but so far, he's in the catbird seat as far as making hay early in the race.
Was at Indianapolis last year where Scott Dixon ran into some overheating problems that took him out of contending for the win in the 500.
Once that temperature starts creeping up, it's very hard to get it to go the other way, Scott. You can take some leaps out, but I think it's probably more severe than that.
We were talking about Dale Coyne a minute ago. Rick is with him.
Well, we were talking about the fact that Connor Daly has a big, huge smile. I think Dale Coyne might have a bigger smile today because his man is up there battling with the Penske's. Let's most importantly talk about the fuel strategy. Does he have enough to make it with one more stop?
Yeah, he does. The second yellow made it real safe. We were gambling on the first one, but this race historically has a lot of yellows, so we figured we'd be all right.
All right, let's talk about Connor Daly. You plucked him out last year to fill in one race for you. What impressed you about that young man?
Just very professional in the car. His feedback was good, and he just had a great attitude about the whole thing. So, you know, he's all excited. So now I'm sure he's very excited being up at the front, sharp end of the grid.
Once again, Dale Coyne, the team owner for Connor Daly. Happy to see that young man way up front.
Dale Coyne referencing numbers of cautions, most in this race's history, 11, fewest 2. Last year we had 5. Connor Daly chasing Juan Pablo Montoya for the race lead. The young American looking to make some noise as he opens his first full Verizon IndyCar Series season. Race leader Juan Pablo Montoya riding on board with him. Download the IndyCar mobile app from Verizon and get exclusive in-car cameras, driver and pit crew audio, and more. Only from Verizon. I apologize. Pollen's a terrible thing when you don't deal with it well. Let's see if Juan sounds a little better than I do.
Yeah, definitely there's something new from the front of the car. The steering is down every time. Do what you got to do. I mean, if you feel it's an issue, you need to come in and look at it.
Talking about the steering, I think, is what I get out of that. And saying maybe a little inconsistent, I think. But the key thing is that as a driver, you don't want to hear them tell you to come in. I don't think that's what he wants to do. And Doc, you'll have more on that?
Yeah, also it may be a braking issue, Scotty. He just said a moment ago as he came by, the right rear rotor is completely cold. And so they said, do what you got to do. They've laid the tires out. They brought them back. They've laid them out again. They said, can you make it a few more laps so we get to our window? So he's riding it out. But they did confirm to me that the right rear rotor is completely cold. So he's got some issues.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on that. And, of course, Doc will keep an ear on that as well. As Montoya continues to lead. Remember, he did not lead this race. until Will Power had a hiccup on the final pit stop a year ago. Then Montoya went to take the lead and held off Power's desperate try with 11 to go to get the lead back. Now the shoes sort of on the other foot here as Montoya approaches the last pit stop as the race leader, and his teammate Simon Pagenaud behind.
And if there is any hint of a brake issue that we are getting from Juan Pablo's car, then that might also be an issue when he starts to come into pit lane. Now, of all the sensors that are on the car and all that information going back to the pit lane, his engineers can explain to him exactly what's going on through the telemetry system that gives all that information that black box collects and sends it back, and you have all those host of engineers that he's sitting there looking at that. But the key thing is the driver's sitting in there, and how does he adapt with whatever problem is going on?
All he can do is adapt. He cannot change the temperature of one rotor in the back. He can either change the balance to put more brake on the back or more balance to put it on the front, and that would change the temperature of both discs. So if he has a problem, there's nothing he can do. So like you said, he has to adapt. Daly's lost a little bit of contact with Montoya, but he's still holding off Simon Pagenaud.
So remember Jan's report a little while ago that Connor Daly's window for that final pit stop was narrower than the others around him, but that window is about to be opened, and we'll see when the first move comes. By the way, Scott Dixon, who did pit earlier, is 43 seconds behind the race leaders. He's the last car on the lead lap in 14th place.
We also have to point out for Scott Dixon, because he came in earlier with that overheating problem, would have to have a yellow on the track for quite a few laps to be able to let him get all the way to the end of the event without him having to come in for a splash of fuel.
Even just to close up and get some track position. This first race of the year has been trouble for Dixon. Remember last year they had the rear jack that wasn't working on his car and had the long pit stops and wound up finishing right about where he's running now, 14th or 15th or so a year ago.
Montoya has definitely taken control of this race. He's started to pull out from Daly and Pagenaud.
Castroneves right there running in 4th place. I would say that Roger Penske's call to throw the reds on and go for it gained him some track position over where he'd been running. Remember, he fell back earlier in the race.
You know, what's going to be interesting to me is that when we come to this next set of stops, we've got Juan Pablo on the blacks and Simon Pagenaud on the blacks. Will they both put on reds, or what's going to be up for them on the next one? Because as we mentioned, cars definitely work different with these different compound tires on. Be very anxious to see if they both have reds left for the final stop, where it's just going to give you a little bit more speed. And will the car stay consistent for them over the long run that they'll have, probably somewhere just in the neighborhood of about 30 laps.
18 team has laid their tires out. Connor Daly.
I'll give you one turn front wing and a set of black.
Okay, let's have a clean pit stop.
Nice clean shot in. Nice clean shot through Pickett's pits.
All right, Rick, here he is.
Yeah, they had a big discussion earlier about what tires to use on this last stint. Connor felt that the reds went away too much. They want the consistency over the long haul. As a result, they're going to the back. You heard they're going to put a change of wing in. Taking a little bit longer because of that wing, but once again, the goal here to have a nice clean stop, and he's out.
You saw 11 seconds. That 11 that shows up on the roll hoop of the vehicle tells you the length of time that the driver spent in the pit box. So that was 11 seconds, which is probably about 3 more than it probably should be at this point in time.
Right
and
behind.
that's probably what, 300 yards, 400 yards on the track?
Definitely. Max Chilton was also just on and off pit road. That's him right behind Montoya, now in between Montoya and Simon Pagenaud. There's Chilton, running in 14th place now.
You see that too on Simon Pagenaud's car up in the top section there of the roll hoop, letting you know that he is in 2nd spot on the racetrack, something that the IndyCar has devised to put on there to let all the fans know sitting in the stands exactly what place, what car is in. I think they've done a tremendous job with relaying that information.
Also has a little indicator when the car is still running after it's stopped, when it's stalled. Here's Castroneves in, Doc.
And remember the call for the captain to put red tires on for Castroneves. He did well with those, making them last, and now they put reds, a set of sticker blacks back on for the final run. So Castroneves is trying to get a top 5 finish. And our leader, Montoya, will be coming in next time by.
Got to clean out the rat ducts.
So troubles for Tony Kanaan's car too, similar to what his teammate Scott Dixon had.
Remember I was saying earlier, because of all these incidences that we've had around this racetrack, there's just a ton of debris that you really can't get picked up. And Jan, you have more on that?
I do. For Tony Kanaan, not only does he have a similar overheating issue as you documented when it comes to the radiators, but he has really been struggling. As we see Simon Pagenaud will break in here because Simon Pagenaud and Montoya are coming down pit road. So first, we're going to have Pagenaud. We know last time that he kept pace with Montoya, but how about this time? He has sticker reds that are going on. We know that Montoya is arriving in his spot. This one is 7.3. Doc?
Sticker reds for Montoya, down and away, 7.7 Montoya. He blasts out, and Pagenaud is 3 car lengths back.
We just saw the best team perform as they always do in preparation for the Indy 500.
Oh, and the
that
pressure
was
on
impeccable.
The crew. Pressure on the crew just to make sure they get it right.
Ryan Hunter-Reay, now the leader, waiting for his pit stop to cycle around. His crew is not laid out yet, so he'll blast by another time.
Using every bit of the
Hit
road.
lap, hit this lap. Need a big in lap here.
Now what they mean by that big in lap is don't take it easy. Drive as hard as you can right up to that area where you have to go down to 50. You can lose easily 3 or 4 seconds if you don't stay on the limit all the way into the pits.
Charlie Kimball has yet to pit. He runs second. Then it goes back around to Montoya and Pagenaud and Castroneves. After getting run into, or having the run in with Felipe, I should say, it doesn't appear that whatever's missing from this 28 car has hurt it significantly.
He's just talked about all weekend, just not really fast, looking for speed. And he said when he put the red sidewall tires in the car finally got some grip. He felt like it was attached to the road. But on the black standard tires that he's on right now, he said as you see him slide, the car just wasn't gripped to the road at all.
Any front wing for the reds here? Do you want any front wing? No.
That's
all right, Jan.
Well, that was a definitive answer on the front wing for sure for Ryan Hunter-Reay, and he is liking his car. You talked about, Scott, the car not getting into the track on the various tires, but you can see these are sticker sidewall red alternate tires. They're waiting on a last bit of fuel. Just about an 8-second stop, 8.1 for Ryan Hunter-Reay. They made a few adjustments. We'll see if these new tires are the ticket for him.
And I mentioned Charlie Kimball. There's his what should be last pit stop. And again, another one of the Ganassi cars needing some radiator cleaning done.
that seems strange to me, Scott, that all 3 of those cars had to have their radiators cleaned.
Rick?
Connor Daly had to bring the car in for 2 problems. Number 1, he'd had damage to the front wing. Still not sure how that happened. They had to change out a front wing, and they said they've got a water temperature issue, so I'm assuming that there was a problem where something slid back into in front of the radiator. As a result, it was driving up the temperature. A double whammy. He had such a spectacular day going. Yeah, they have the hope of what can happen later on, but for today, this one's come to an end.
All right, Rick. We'll see if we can find what happened to that 18 to cause him to come in and change that front wing. So there's the front 3. Teammates all. Penske Power at the front of the pack. Pagenaud second, Castroneves third. But up front, the winner here in St. Pete a year ago and the winner of last year's Indianapolis 500, Juan Pablo Montoya.
The Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Whatever you drive a Firestone.
And we look ahead to the month of May at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Grand Prix of Indianapolis on May 14th. And the following weekend, qualifying for the Indianapolis 500-mile race, and of course, the 100th running of the greatest spectacle in racing. Our telecast presented by Firestone, 77 days from today, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Juan Pablo Montoya has made his last pit stop. Barring a late caution flag, the question is, does he have the pace to hold off Simon Pagenaud, who's put a couple of quick laps in since the pit stops and shaved just a little of the gap between them.
And this is so hard to do because you want to push and push and push, but you cannot do it too much, because if you take off what we call the edge off those red tires, those red sidewall tires, they'll start to fade away on you very, very quickly. So both drivers are driving it just to the limit and not trying to go over.
One of the other stories of the day, the fourth Team Penske car that actually qualified on the pole for this race yesterday. Will Power not able to drive today. He has now been placed into IndyCar's concussion protocol after a further examination. And Oriol Servia started that car from the back of the field today. He's running a lap down in 17th place.
1.5.
Catching up to Montoya is one thing, passing him is another.
This is the most difficult part of the race too, simply because you've been in the car all day long. It's hot, you've already lost probably 4 or 5 pounds. Such a difficult thing to do to drive these cars with all the downforce, no power steering, and now you're starting to make sure that you don't make a mental mistake.
What I like about this end of this race is that they don't have to be fuel. There's no fuel economy. It's just go as fast as you can.
And I've always said, as all racing should be, if it was to me, I'd be taking those fuel trim knobs out of the car, and it's 100% fuel. Let the driver maybe let the driver turn around and be able to see how he can make fuel, as we call it, by rolling through the turn a little bit different and how you put your foot on the throttle. But take the fuel trims out and just let these guys go racing.
You talked about how much you love this race, Eddie. Look at this course.
It's tremendous.
And the unique set of physical assets that just happen to all be gathered in this section of downtown by the harbor that make it all happen.
And the city folk really embrace it.
Down through the park by the ball field. Of course, a year ago, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, Juan Pablo came down for the final pit stop in second, got out ahead of Will Power. That was with 11 to go, and Will made the desperate attempt to get the lead back.
And I really think that's where he set his foundation up for how he won the Indy 500. Will Power was quicker. He got ahead of him in a pit stop, and he just outdrove him, I think.
Didn't give any ground, for sure.
None at all.
Drove him, and the lead for this race for Juan Pablo Montoya happened on that restart. Don't forget, where he outmuscled Simon Pagenaud. Even though this restart was only for a couple of laps, he had got the pass completed before we had that big crash down here in turn 4 where he's headed right now. So that restart played the role for him to lead the event.
The gap is now 2.3 seconds. He's slowly creating a bigger gap corner by corner.
Eddie, we sat with these guys earlier in the weekend, and really two complete opposite guys. I mean, Simon is very buttoned up and very technical. I mean, all drivers are very technical, but he wants to be everything precise. And Juan is like, when you talk to him, he goes, whatever, I'll make it work, because I think he more adapts to a car when he's driving it around a racetrack. He just seemed to be very relaxed on it. And Simon, obviously not won yet for Team Penske. We talked earlier about, the pressure is on him to do so. Just a little bit more stiff, I guess, than Juan. I mean, Juan's going to go out there and drive the wheels off of it, and then tomorrow it's a new day.
Juan has that special ingredient called unique talent and endless bravery. I've seen him do things in a race car which you don't even imagine. The way he won Indy last year when he passed Will Power was something that would be very hard to pull off. And right now he's just being very disciplined. He's just running his pace, adding a little bit to the distance.
You mentioned, Scott, about talking to Juan Pablo. He is an interesting guy to talk to, right? You sit 5 drivers down and ask all 5 of them the same question. 4 of them will say the answer is A, and Juan will probably say the answer is B, but yet completely back it up in why his thinking is that way. And certainly on the racetrack with his driving.
He has won in Formula One, he has won in NASCAR, and he has won 2 Indy 500s.
You mentioned it, always good video to see, especially when the lead is kind of stabilized. Last year's Indianapolis 500 and the finish between Montoya and Will Power.
Now watch how he comes down on him. that was the end of the race right there.
Had himself positioned to hold off the last straightaway draft and drink the milk and wear the wreath as the Indianapolis 500 winner. Closing laps of the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, downtown St. Petersburg, Florida. Season opening race for the Verizon IndyCar Series, being led by the man you ride with, Juan Pablo Montoya. Tonight, the premiere of the latest 30 for 30 film, Fantastic Lies, is the story behind the Duke lacrosse scandal in 2006. Airs starting at 9 Eastern on ESPN, streaming live on Watch ESPN and the ESPN app. I have read several reviews of this, and they all say it is a must-see tonight at 9 Eastern on ESPN. A must-see for Juan Pablo Montoya is that his gap is growing on Simon Pagenaud as he's legged out the lead here after Pagenaud nicked into it a little bit right after the pit stop.
You know, and really his lead came back on one of our restarts when you think about it, because at that one point in time he was behind Simon Pagenaud. Remember that restart where we had that big accident? Watch this. Run down here to turn 1 on the restart, wheel to wheel with Simon Pagenaud teammates. Now watch this and listen. Pardon me, excuse me, I'm playing through, boys, because I always say take advantage on starts and restarts, and that was programmed for him before he got to that last turn. He knew what he wanted to accomplish, Eddie.
But they both drove really well. That could have been an accident in the making, and it wasn't. They were just two hard-willed drivers that didn't want to give an inch until they had to.
And there you see Juan legging out the lead on Simon Pagenaud. Quick summary of the day so far. Pagenaud's led the most laps, 48 of the 97 we've completed. Montoya, the second most laps led, 31. And then Connor Daly led 15. Ryan Hunter-Reay led for 3. We've had just the 2 cautions in the race, both very closely bunched together. The highlight you'll probably see most on YouTube or Sports Center or wherever will be the big 9-car pileup down in turn 4 that happened behind that racing we just saw between Pagenaud and Montoya.
There'd be a lot of people texting each other, a lot of drivers texting each other on the way home tonight, pointing fingers at each other. So they get a couple of weeks to cool off before the next event. But as I'm watching Simon Pagenaud, I'm sure you're going to agree with this. You're sitting there in the same car that you have, and you're watching your teammate drive away from you, so you're saying to yourself, what is he doing that I'm not?
Absolutely, you're very correct, and the mindset of both these drivers are different. Right now, Montoya is just trying to finish the race. He's hearing all these sounds in the gearbox and thinking about the brakes, and he's trying to refocus on just doing a clean lap after lap. But Simon Pagenaud right now is, you have to think, like you said, downbeat. How is he going that much faster than I am right now? Jan?
Well, I can tell you what the engineers have to say about that. We know you've documented the incredible talent of a Juan Pablo Montoya, but this, of course, is the next generation, Simon Pagenaud. And his engineer, Ben Bretzman, said one of the things that makes Simon Pagenaud so talented is he drives the car more with his feet. He says he has great feet, and what I mean by that is by working the brake and the throttle, he actually turns the car, whereas we've seen for Juan Pablo Montoya, he is all about grabbing the wheel and essentially driving the car with the steering wheel. So when he's looking up and he's seeing Juan Pablo go into the distance, he's knowing one is a more professor style, very distinct, and that pays dividends on certain types of racetracks, but when it needs aggressive, when you need somebody to grab the wheel, there's no question that Juan Pablo Montoya has a unique style.
So if we're going to call Pagenaud a professor, we got to come up with a name for Montoya. Go on.
I'm thinking.
I'm thinking too. Yeah.
I would just say a wild man.
I was going to say the fierce lion. He's coming along.
Once he gets going, he's unstoppable.
Ryan Hunter-Reay leads the Honda contingent in this race, running in 4th, has had his share of troubles today.
We talk about
our Firestone durable driver of the race. He really has had to endure on through some things that have been going on.
All these drivers that have competed around here today are getting themselves what I call back into race shape. You can go off and you can go testing, and you know this, Eddie, from all the years that we drove, and you can go practicing testing and do long runs, but when you come to a race and you get beat up, you know, your body gets beat up, your rib cage gets beat up, your hands get beat up, your neck gets beat up, and this makes race car drivers really tough, really durable. I think about neck muscles. I talked to Spencer Pickett the other day, and he's been running Indy Light cars, as you know, has won here 5 out of 10 times that he's competed here at St. Petersburg. Said, what's the biggest difference? He goes, well, obviously the horsepower and the speed, but he said, I have a hard time with my neck because of the braking of these cars and the turning ability of these cars. Drivers do take a punishing around this race course.
Boy, he's busy with that steering wheel.
So we mentioned the Honda Chevy storyline several times throughout the day. Summation on the day right now, Chevy, Penske Chevys in particular, have the top 3. And I'm curious because it took Honda a while to catch up to the Aero kits last year, and maybe more specifically to Honda race teams to understand how to tune their cars. Hunter-Reay won, what, 2 of the last 4, or the Andretti team anyway, won 2 of the last 4 races last year. So will they get off to a slow start this year and pick it up as the year goes on, or will they catch on more quickly to how to tune this latest setup of the Honda Aero kit?
I think they've closed the distance they had with the Chevy cars, but to really get into depth in that, Alan, you have to almost take the Penske cars out of the equation. Penske's have been so competitive on this track. So if you take Penske's out of the equation and you look at everybody else, I would say Honda has closed the gap.
And I would agree, and I think 2 things to further note on the Honda is that all the Honda teams say there's less bits and pieces, less parts to put on their car this year to make up their aerodynamic package, so it's easier to tune. And when it's easier to tune, it gives you a great opportunity to tune it in quickly on race weekends, especially at tracks like this where you don't get a chance to go test, like at Elkhart Lake or Mid-Ohio. And the other thing the drivers are saying is the car is more drivable. That window of driving it to make it easy to drive is larger. Before it was too much on a knife edge. A little battle going on here. Just a little slice for Scott Dixon going in with Munoz.
Trying to make up ground after he had to make the extra pit stop and the longer pit stop to get the radiators cleaned out on that 9 car.
And furthermore on the Honda is that the manufacturers are able to do some updates on the engines over the winter, and that's basically in the top end of the engines, the valves and the heads and the intake plenum and things of that nature. And we understand that Chevy's done a good job, but we understand Honda's maybe not put all their eggs up front right now and showed everything to everybody that they have some more things coming down the line. So let's say they've got a 2015 plus motor in there right now. By the time they get to Indianapolis, they think they'll have all their updates in there for 2016.
To answer your question, Alan, I am 100% positive that this Indy 500 will be even more competitive than last year. And as Scott said, we haven't even seen all the engine development.
So Montoya here has caught the tail end of the field and is getting into a little bit of lap traffic. We'll see if Pagenaud is able to make any ground up on him. He did about 4/10 on that last lap, but again, Pagenaud will have to go through these same cars in the final 7 to go. Penske started off last season very strong, just like they appear to be doing this year, but then at the tail end of the season, didn't win a race for some time. Do we think that the opportunity is there for them to be more consistent over the course of the season, or do they just start more strongly than everybody else by the way they go about their winters, and other people catch up as the year goes on?
I think they gave a lot of gifts to the other teams last year. They did not capitalize on the speed that they had. Will Power is arguably the fastest driver car package in this series. And yet, when you look at them, they don't win as many races as they should. Scott, look at that.
You know, when you talk about the win column, obviously it's a little bit different, but the poles, look at that. That tells you the horsepower and the speed getting out there and making the car go quickly for 1 or 2 laps. But going back on the Penske, you know, and you say taking it out of the equation, Certainly Penske has done a lot of work over the winter. From talking to drivers, they said they were called in for all 4 of them numerous times to be able to sit down, go through data, go through notes, look at last year's races. Ron Rzuski, who oversees some of the engineering there at Penske, I was talking to him the other day. He said we have really focused on making sure that every last little thing that we can look at has been taken care of, because honestly, the only people that can beat Penske is themselves, like they maybe did last year when obviously Montoya and Power ran into each other at Sonoma in the very last race.
We're going to be 5 to go here after this corner.
Little trio of cars having its own battle just in front of the race leader. That's Jack Hawksworth, Alexander Rossi. The 2 cars just in front of Montoya. And coming up after the race winds up in 5 more laps, NBA Countdown, followed by the Sunday Showcase, Cavaliers and Clippers.
Lotion P5.
Yes.
With the Honda. He's the 2nd quickest Honda right now.
Now we're in trouble. Moving to the back stroke.
Who was that?
Copy.
That was Montoya. Did he say we're in trouble?
Yes.
Do the best you can here.
Well, maybe something's going on that
5
we don't
laps
know
to
about.
go.
Here comes Pagano. There are 2 cars between Montoya and Pagano. Now 3.
It's a 98 of Alexander Rossi. See the blue flag being shown by the turn marshal there, letting everybody know that traffic's coming.
Right now it's advantage Montoya. He's got a lot of traffic between him and Pagano, and clear sailing ahead of him. Pagano gets by 1. And the 2 cars in front of him touch.
In front of him. Does that hold him up or create an opening to get through?
Gap is 2 seconds.
It's always difficult because you know you're coming up behind guys that are racing for position and they may not be looking in their mirrors.
I think all of this has cost Pagano about 2 seconds this lap.
There's that blue flag by the corner marshal. That blue flag indicates that there's a faster car coming up from behind. So you're supposed to give them a little bit of space, a little bit of area to maneuver past, but like I mentioned, if they're racing for position, that doesn't sometimes always happen.
And they are. And we're right at the end. After this lap, there'll only be 3 to go.
See if Pagano can get a run here. Nope. Rossi's going to pull in and give way.
Very good move. Got to be careful going off the line because they're going to pick up all that dead rubber on the side of the track.
So whether that was Brian Herta's call or whoever it was,
could have been.
Good call. But, what'd you say? You said 2 seconds?
And it was more than that.
Yes.
2.5. Look at this, look at this.
Hunter Ray on Castroneves.
For position.
Absolutely.
Honda, P3.
Castroneves had a section of the race earlier where he struggled, fell back. Roger Penske made a strategy call. Castroneves picked some of the ground back up. Maybe the handle's gone away again in the final laps, but Ryan Hunter-Reay up to 3rd onto the podium. Mikhail Aleshin next behind Helio Castroneves.
This is going to be a great finish.
Now, as a driver, when you're watching the car in front, as we watch Juan Pablo Montoya speed down the front stretch, when you're watching that car in front, you can tell if they've got a problem by the way they drive the car, and right now it looks like Helio's looking in his mirrors. Do I have to defend? Aleshin didn't
5 seconds.
I think Aleshin's going to make a run on Castroneves. And it could happen right after this corner. He's right up his gearbox.
That's Felipe giving way.
Aleshin is another driver that spent some time in the hospital after his last accident. I'm sure it was a very long winter for him.
So Rossi and Daly are racing for 12th and 13th. Then Castroneves and Aleshin are racing for 4th and 5th. Charlie Kimball, they're running in 7th place. Scott Dixon back in 8th. And the white flag for Juan Pablo Montoya.
What a masterful race he has driven.
Really a very technical race after being so aggressive to pass Simon Pagenaud. That's what you want to hear, 4.1.
And it's always difficult when you're one of the older drivers in a team, when you have this new driver coming on board like Simon Pagenaud that everybody is singing the praises of. You have to show your dominance every time you get in the car. And what he's doing right now is he's starting to build towards the Indy 500. There will not be another driver in the field that will be as hungry as him. This is the first step to attacking Indy and trying to be the winner of the 100th Indianapolis 500.
He will not lead the most laps, but he's going to lead the ones that count the most. Another win at St. Pete for Roger Penske, and back-to-back wins for Juan Pablo Montoya.
Local yellow, turn 1. Way to go, buddy. Good job, guys. Hell of a drive all day. Sliding. Great job. Good way to start the year.
There's no better way to start the year.
I know it's hard for you.
Pagenaud with a congratulatory wave.
Yeah, congratulating, but still wants to get in the trailer later on tonight and just ask him, okay, what am I missing? He'll sit down and go through a debriefing and see what they did differently to him. We obviously give a special shout out to Will Power, who we know is watching the telecast right now. We hope that he is getting well and back in the cockpit for the next event.
So on second consecutive win at St. Pete, the 8th win here at this racetrack out of the last 11 for Roger Penske. And what that radio was caution in turn 1. It's where Charlie Kimball's race came to an end. Well, a year ago, it was a come-from-behind win over Will Power. 2 years ago, when he returned to IndyCar racing here at St. Pete for that first time, Roger Penske called Juan Pablo Montoya a frustrated duck. He'll be a very happy man right now.
He's 2 in a row. That was a very technical drive, wasn't it?
Masterful, and you know, when you think about it, you really expect that a lot of these younger drivers would be making their mark and really starting to take over from these 40-year-olds that we have, because we've got quite a few of them. Canan, Castroneves, Juan Pablo, but experience.
This is going to be a hard guy to knock off the throne. And if anybody has the opportunity to do it, it will be Simon Pagenaud. But he drove a great race today, but he was definitely schooled by this immensely talented Colombian.
Yeah, see, I think he did have something going on with the steering, because see there, he's actually talking about something loose or something moving, which makes this win even more impressive.
Look at the play in this.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, the two-time Indy 500 winner, Juan Pablo Montoya, is now a two-time winner of the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Juan, step out here. Hey, great job, my friend. Hey, take us back to the restart. You and your teammate Simon Pagenaud, wheel to wheel, battling, and you were able to get the lead. What was the key there?
I mean, it's great that we race teammates, because we give each other, we race each other hard, but we give each other room. And everybody at this Team Penske, Verizon, and all our supporters done an amazing job. Can't thank them enough.
Your team last year said the win here is what propelled you, momentum-wise, and this whole team toward the Indy 500 victory. Do you believe in omens?
I don't, but we're here to win everything, so.
Hey, we heard you a little bit nervous on the radio toward the end. You said we may be in trouble. Were you joking, or did you have a problem?
The steering arm is broken. Like there's play on my steering wheel. Like play completely.
So you were hanging on with a steering wheel that wasn't turning the car?
Yeah, it was kind of turned, like lag, then turn. But it was okay.
It was okay. Hey, congratulations on win number 2 in a row here.
All right, thank you.
Juan Pablo Montoya gets the win. And what a way for Roger Penske to begin his 50th anniversary as a car owner with a sweep here in the Grand Prix Grand Prix of St. Petersburg.
They were a lap down, but my tires were
All right, and we take a look at the results from the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Juan Pablo Montoya with his 15th career win in the IndyCar Series and a Penske sweep of the top 2 and 3 of the top 4.
Very impressive when you hear that steering problem that he had. But Ryan Hunter-Reay with Andretti Autosport, give them a heads up because I think they're going to be very competitive this year. Obviously, another Penske car with Castro Neves, but Mikhail Loshin, that is a great run for him because he's been out of a car for a year, as we talked about before, Eddie.
And Jack Hawksworth, I thought, did well, but he got caught up in all of that chaos. Alexander Rossi was his first race. He managed to finish. The most difficult drive of the day, I think, was Oriol Servia. He got put in one of the best cars, but how can you jump into a car at the last minute like that and make something out of it? And Joseph Newgarden had a really tough race.
So the series has begun for 2016, 77 days until the Indianapolis 500, and we very much look forward to the month of May. Wish our friends at NBCSN well with the next couple of races in the series till we rejoin you at the Speedway. NBA Countdown is next with Sage, Doug, and Jalen. Juan Pablo Montoya has won for a second year in a row in the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg.